My name is Tim Moy. I'm here to talk to you about what you might consider for your next vehicle purchase. I've been an automotive instructor at Moraine Park Technical College since 2001. I was a automotive technician for 20 years prior to that, 17 of which was at GM dealerships. I was pretty much a technology guy. I was not so much a gearhead or a performance guy. I liked technology. When I saw new technology come on vehicles, that's what got me excited. When I learned about hybrid vehicles coming out in 1999, I attended numerous workshops and trainings and so forth, learning about them. And I've been intrigued about them ever since. Um, Started leasing electric vehicles in 2013, and now a couple years ago, I purchased a Chevy Bolt EV and a Tesla Model 3. The car that's behind me is one that looks exactly like the car that I drive. My wife drives a Chevy Bolt EV. She likes small little cars. I'm not a big fan of small little cars, but she likes them. And that's, in the beginning, that's all we can get for battery electric vehicles. Now we have choices. And so anyway, that's the Chevy Bolt EV. Purpose of this presentation is to try and avoid what you see on the right. I don't know what city that's in, but I was in Chicago in the Willis Tower once, and it kind of looked like that. And at sunset, and it's terrible. I mean, it's bad. And so, we don't necessarily see it so much here in Wisconsin, although I've been saying to my wife and others for many years that when you look at the sunset and you see that pink little hue right along the horizon, that's pollution. At least that's my belief. If you look at the skies today, they look a lot clearer, a lot cleaner today because of everybody staying at home for the last couple of months with COVID-19. You can, when I'm out driving, I can see further distances right now because I think there's less pollution in the air, even here in Wisconsin. So I'm here to talk to you about educate you on a variety of powertrain options to help reduce that. Even if you don't care about pollution, I think economics and the driving experience will help with you deciding to maybe, hey, let's take a look at hybrid or electric vehicles as our next vehicle purchase because it is better. And finally, you have a choice in what you drive, and the government incentives aren't the strongest, and so it really relies on consumers choosing what they want to drive and educating themselves on what the options are out there, and that's what I'm here to help you with. So powertrain options. Powertrain is what moves a car down the road. So for the last 100 years, we've been driving gas and diesel engines with automatic or manual transmissions where we have to shift or the transmission automatically shifts in order to keep that engine in its best range and its best working conditions. And we've become accustomed to that. That's our normal, okay? But we have other options now that are better. So hybrid vehicles still have gas engines, but now you add a second powertrain system to them, which is electric motors and a high voltage battery. It increases fuel economy dramatically. A lot of hybrid vehicles are getting 40, 50 miles per gallon. And so, and the driving experience isn't that different. You still get on accelerator to accelerate, you hit the brakes to stop. It doesn't drive that different. If some people will notice the electric motors kicking in and so forth, but it's very minor and very intuitive. It's not difficult at all. I mean, it's just like driving any normal car. And hybrid vehicles have been around since 1999. So 20 years they've been around. So we have a track record. We know what fails and how long they last and stuff like that. Plug-in hybrids have been around about 5 years, maybe just a little bit longer than that. And they're the same thing as a hybrid vehicle, except you have a plug-in. You have a plug on that you can plug the car in and get a little extra or longer electric range. So most hybrids, you start out electric, but as soon as you get on an accelerator too heavy or you get to a certain speed, the electric motor still is there to assist, but the engine kicks in. Plug-in hybrid vehicles, you can run pure electric for up to 40 miles in some makes and models. And in some cases, on some cars, you can divert that miles, meaning that if you're going to get on the highway, That's where gas engine is most efficient, is on the highway. And then in town, the hybrid or electric vehicle is most efficient. So if you're going to get on the highway first and then travel through town, you divert and run your EV when you get into town. It makes it more efficient, so that way it costs you less to operate that vehicle. But again, you have two different systems, additional parts on the car that could fail. And that's one of the drawbacks of hybrid vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles. You got more parts on the car that can fail. What I would what I would love to see people do is buy battery electric vehicles. I've been promoting them for 7 years now because they are better. There's a lot fewer parts than a conventional car, much less a hybrid or plug-in hybrid. And the parts that are there don't wear out necessarily. Electric motors don't wear out. I mean, will they wear out after if you have 1,000,000 miles on them? Maybe, probably, but they don't wear out like an engine or a transmission does. Um, the batteries, that's the big question that people have is the batteries, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But battery electric vehicles are a very simple system. Actually, I should be going ahead here because this talks about the plug-in hybrid and so on. And so battery electric vehicles don't have an engine. They only have electric motor or motors if it's all-wheel drive. No gas, simple, a lot fewer moving parts, so a lot fewer parts to wear out and to possibly fail. They're fun to drive. You don't have that transmission shifting. When you get an accelerator, it shifts smoothly. They're great in town, stop and go traffic because contrary to a normal vehicle, when you accelerate, it's instant torque. Whereas an engine, you have to wait for the engine to rev up and then it shifts. Electric vehicles don't shift. They're smooth and they're quiet. And then the other thing is when there's a thing called regenerative braking on hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles. You don't notice regenerative braking so much on a hybrid vehicle, but you really notice on a battery electric vehicle. And regenerative braking is simple. There's no additional parts. What it does is electronically turns the electric motor into a generator. And so what happens is when you let off the accelerator, the motor electronically turns into a generator to create electricity to put back into the battery. What it also does is slows the vehicle down. So in a conventional vehicle, when you let off the accelerator, the car coasts. In order to come to a stop, you got to apply the brakes, which is wasted energy. You're creating heat that's all wasted. It's not used for anything. And you have to maintain those brakes. On a battery electric vehicle, and to some extent on the hybrids and plug-in hybrids, the brakes last a long time because the brakes are hardly used at all. So it's using that electric motor, which is a giant rotating magnet. That magnetism helps slow the vehicle down. And when you come to a complete stop, if you do have your foot on the brake, you can release it because the magnet and that motor will hold the vehicle still. So you can relax during stop and go traffic instead of having your foot on the brake and pushing the brake pedal. It becomes a much more enjoyable driving experience. Even if you hate driving, you will enjoy or hate driving less, I should say, with a battery electric vehicle because it's just easier. So some common questions I get is, what's the cost of the high voltage battery? This question is a little bit annoying in the sense that nobody asks, well, how much does my engine cost to replace? Or how much does my transmission cost to replace? Those are going to cost you thousands of dollars to replace. And they are much more prone to failure than a high voltage battery. High voltage batteries or batteries in general do not fail like that. They don't fail quickly. They don't leave you stranded unless you just don't charge it. Batteries degrade over time. They lose energy. So what happens is if you have a vehicle that gets 300 miles of range when it's brand new, over time, that range is going to be less. After a while, you may only get 295, and then 290 or 285. And so batteries lose range over time. That's why, and here in Wisconsin, you want to get the biggest battery you can with the longest range because of that reason, as well as the other thing with batteries is in the cold weather, they lose energy as well. So typically you'll lose up to 30% of your range in the wintertime. So you want to get the longest range battery you can if it's going to be your primary vehicle. And so that way in the wintertime, you've got enough range. So keep in mind that 30%. I've experienced that for 7 years now, and that's pretty true. And so if I have a 300-mile range vehicle, I'm only going to get about 200 miles of range in the wintertime, in the coldest of winter. So as it gets colder, the range drops. And the reason being is because if you need heat, it comes from that high voltage battery, because the electric vehicle does not produce heat automatically. Engines produce waste heat, and we use that wasted heat to heat up our cabin, heat up the car. With a battery electric vehicle, you don't have that. So, but the heat is more instant in a battery electric vehicle. I mean, it's really quick. You don't have to go start the car and wait 10 minutes to have some heat. You turn the heater on, within a minute or two, you got heat. It's very nice. And so, but getting back to the cost, yes, the batteries are expensive. So a Toyota Prius, it's got the smallest high voltage battery of all of these segments. There's cars out there with smaller batteries. Toyota Prius, because it's the most popular vehicle, hybrid vehicle, we'll use that as an example. It costs about $2,000 just for the battery, plus the labor to have it put in. And that's a relatively small battery. Now you go to a plug-in hybrid, it's gonna be a little bit more. You go to a battery electric vehicle, substantially more. So the Nissan Leaf was the first battery electric vehicle to come on the market in 2011. And it was estimated at $7,000 for that battery. You go to a Tesla, which is some of your longest range vehicles, you're gonna be approaching $15,000 for the battery. But here again, as I just mentioned, batteries don't fail all at once. And so you're going to get lots of warning when you need to replace that battery. It's not going to leave you stranded somewhere. And the other thing to consider too is the manufacturers know that consumers are wary of that battery and how much it costs. So they're warranting the battery for 8 to 10 years. Most manufacturers are 10 years, 100,000 miles, 120,000 miles. What does that mean? Well, it means that they will warranty it, most of them will warranty it as long as it has 70% of its energy left. So if you, to put in the simple math, if you have a 100-mile range battery and at 10 years, 100,000 miles, it's got less than 70 miles of range, they're probably going to warranty your battery. If it's got more than 70 miles of range after 10 years, they're probably not going to warranty your battery. So keep that in mind. So it's a legitimate question to know what the cost of the battery is, but the likelihood of you having to replace it is very, very slim. Range used to be a question I don't hear too much anymore, because most of our newer battery electric vehicles have plenty of range. They're all over 200 miles of range now. Anything new, 200 less than 200 miles. With early ones were just not, people were not interested in them. So it becomes less of a question now. Range for a hybrid electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid it's not a concern, because you're running on gas. Once you run on electricity, you run on gas, so the range is not an issue. So that was more for battery electric vehicles, which kind of ties into the next question: charging battery electric vehicles. Charging network. First of all, there's 3 different levels of charging: level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is the slowest, and it's where you plug into a regular household 110 outlet. It's only really viable for the plug-in hybrids, because that battery is small enough that it will charge. And most manufacturers design the batteries to be charged overnight, so like a 10-hour period. So most batteries, any of these will charge overnight, 8 to 12 hours, 10 hours being average. And that means your battery is completely dead and you're charging it to 100%. And that's not always the case. Rarely are you going to come home with a dead battery. So just to give you a point of reference there. So level 1 is 110 volt, and we almost all have that available in our garages or something. If we, for renting, that's another issue, which I'll talk about a little bit. Level 2, the next level of charging, is 240 volt. Same as electric clothes dryer, or a lot of stoves or ovens use 240 volts. So all households have 240 volt available to them. It's whether you have that voltage available out in your garage or outside your home where you would plug in. Electricians can install that. And so if you have that available, that's what you need that to do a battery electric vehicle. Excuse me, all manufacturers recommend level 2 charging to charge your vehicles. And that's what you're going to do 95% of the time, if not more. You're going to be charging at home using your electricity, which is far cheaper than gas. My electricity bill went down after I bought electric vehicles, and I talked to my utility company and got on the peak off-peak use rate plan. So off-peak is at night and holidays and weekends, and that's when I charge. My electricity rate is half as what it used to be. During the day, it's more expensive, but we've adjusted our electricity usage, and our electric bill has actually gone down. And now I don't pay gas for anything. So the third level is level 3, and that's really your public charge stations, called DC fast charging, or in Tesla is called superchargers. And that's when you're doing long distance trips and you need a little bit more range, a little bit more battery. So you're going to plug in and you want to do it quickly. Most of them are going to give you about 100 miles of range in about 30 minutes. That's that would be on the low end. Some cars are much faster, 200 miles in 30 minutes of range, and that varies depending on the charge station and on the vehicle you drive. And there's a lot of charge stations available. When I first started driving in 2013, there was only Milwaukee and Madison in Wisconsin had charge stations. Now they're all over. Sheboygan, Beaver Dam just got a new charge station in January, February. Madison's got 2 of them now. Eau Claire, Mauston, Green Bay, I think I said Sheboygan already. Oshkosh have fast charge stations available, and they're sprouting up daily or weekly or monthly. I mean, a new one's going to be popping up, and so they're coming. And that again is used for long distance driving. And I have a website that you can go to find those at the end of this presentation. Are BEVs available in SUVs? SUVs is the most popular segment being purchased today by consumers, SUVs. So the small or medium-sized SUV, the most popular segment would be like the Chevy Equinox, Ford Escape, Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, probably the 4 most popular SUVs purchased today. Tesla has the Model X, which is going to be a little bit bigger than that and more expensive. And they have the Model Y, which is the SUV version of that Model 3 behind me. And so that Model Y is going to be comparable to that Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, Chevy Equinox. Ford's coming out with the Mustang Mach-E, all electric SUV, which is going to be, it's almost identical in size to the Tesla Model Y. Audi has the e-tron, which is going to be just a little bit bigger, maybe more, next segment up as far as size, but not near as efficient and doesn't have quite the range. I think it's only 200 some miles of range, like 204 or something like that. But it's an SUV, and so if that's what you're looking for. And Jaguar I-Pace gets a little bit better range than the Audi. Audi charges fast. That's one advantage to that, is I think it's one of the faster charging vehicles. But limited supply available, and but you can look up Audi and Jaguar. But anyway, so they're available, and like I said, Ford's coming out, and other manufacturers coming out with them. They're all in the pipeline and work, and so you'll be seeing those in the future. Aren't BEVs expensive? Yes. Like any new technology, battery electric vehicles are going to be more expensive than a similar vehicle like it. But the thing you have to consider is the upfront cost is more expensive, but the cost of ownership is what's going to pull it in line. Meaning it's going to make it competitive because you're not buying gas. You're using electricity, which is far cheaper. Even public charge stations, electricity rates are cheaper than gas. And the other thing to consider too is the maintenance. You're not paying for oil changes and tune-ups and stuff like that you have to do to maintain an air filter and stuff like that on a traditional vehicle. You don't have those things on a battery electric vehicle, so you don't have that maintenance. You do have those things on the hybrids and the plug-in hybrids. Hence why I kind of shy away from that unless that's your only option. But the cost is coming down, and as more and more people ask for them, purchase them, and more manufacturers are building them, the cost will come down. And so it's getting better. I can't afford a new battery electric. Are they available used? And the answer to that is yes. You might not find a whole lot in SUVs, but you can find battery electric vehicles used. A couple examples. If you're looking for a quick little commuter car, a small commuter car, like that Chevy Bolt I showed you, the Nissan Leaf, we leased 2 of those. They were awesome vehicles. Great for around town. Great for a college student. Send your student off to college, you want to give them a car, give them a Nissan Leaf. Depending on how far away from home they are, they may not be able to get there and back, but once they're there, it's a great commuter car around the campus, around town. You can buy used Nissan Leafs for like under 10 grand with like 10 to 20,000 miles on them. They're cheap, inexpensive vehicles, and they don't have any maintenance, and electricity is cheap. So that would be an awesome. The Chevy Volt, which is an extended range electric vehicle, is another nice option. They stopped producing those a year or so ago, and they still have an engine on them, but the engine there to primarily run a generator. It runs it's a little different than a plug-in hybrid, but similar, but more electric. And those you can get fairly inexpensive because they stopped producing them. It was a very limited segment of vehicles. So my recommendations, if you have a 240 volt outlet in your garage already, or can put one in, or willing to put one in, a battery electric vehicle is going to work for you. If you have the ability to, and the only option you have is 110 volt outlet, and you can't do 240 volt, maybe you have an older home or what have you, the plug-in hybrid is probably the best you're going to be able to do that. If you live in a multifamily dwelling rent, as I mentioned or brought up earlier, you're kind of limited to what you can do. You're not looking at any plug-in option. You're looking at hybrid or sticking with your internal combustion car, unfortunately. But here's what I want to ask you to do. Talk to your landlord. Ask your landlord. Even if you don't have one yet, ask your landlord, can they install a charge station, or can they install a 240 volt outlet or a 110 outlet, something that you could use? And if they are willing to, then you would have that availability to purchase that as your next vehicle. If you're looking to move, ask any prospective landlords if they have electricity available for plugging in. And here's the reason why I want you to ask. This is only to ask. The more people who ask the questions, the more aware landlords are going to be that people are looking to do this, looking to buy electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids. And if they're seeing that, the next time they build a new apartment complex, they might consider putting electricity in, or they might consider putting charge stations in their apartment complex parking lots for tenants to use. So it's the toughest group of people to get to buy electrified vehicles because you're limited as to where you can plug in. You can buy an electric vehicle and plug in at public charge station if you know there's one near where you live, but it's just inconvenient and it's not going to be economically as feasible. It's still cheaper than gas, but not as cheap. So just something to think about. Highly recommend battery electric vehicles to retired folks, whether you're retired or your parents are retired, looking to buy a car. Why? Older folks who are retired tend to do a lot of short trips, and short trips are really hard on internal combustion engines. You got to do more frequent oil changes because it can damage the inside of the engine. Battery electric vehicles thrive on that. They don't care about short trips. They do well in short trips. And on top of that, then these retired folks, don't have to take your car in for those frequent oil changes. It's just one less thing you have to worry about and think about. There's no things to wear out or neglect on a battery electric vehicle. And so it's just, I highly recommend it for those kind of folks. Some final thoughts. If you own more than one vehicle in your household, why can't one be electric? Think about it. Can one of your vehicles be electric? And trust me, if you have an electric vehicle, it's going to become your primary vehicle. That's what happened to my wife and I when we first got our first one. We still had a couple of gas cars here because we had kids at home driving, and we were driving that electric vehicle, that first Nissan Leaf. We were driving all over the place. The kids were driving it. It was cheaper to operate, and it was fun to drive. And so we were using it. And once you have one, you're going to want a second one. Trust me. It's a much more enjoyable driving experience. Or if you hate driving, it's less hateful. It's just a more enjoyable driving experience. Toyota makes the best hybrids. So if you're looking for recommendations, whether it's a plug-in hybrid or hybrids, Toyota's been doing it the longest. They got the best reputation with that. The RAV4, their entire lineup other than the pickup trucks is available in hybrid form. And several of their cars are available in plug-in hybrid. And now I just found out just the other day that Toyota RAV4 is going to be available as a plug-in hybrid for 2021. Supposed to be coming out later this summer. And that's going to be a very economical vehicle to own. So there you have a SUV available in a plug-in hybrid. I think it's getting 40 miles of range. I think that's why I quoted the 40 miles earlier, because I think that was the one. If you like minivans, Chrysler Pacifica minivan is a plug-in hybrid. I drove one of those. They're a nice vehicle. I think they get 38 miles of electric range. And so my neighbor has one. So you know, there's options out there. Tesla by far makes the best electric vehicles. That's all they make is battery electric vehicles. So obviously that's what they focus on. So they're good, they're efficient, they get the longest range. A couple of those other vehicles I mentioned earlier that, you know, they either have to have bigger batteries to get the same range as a Tesla, which means more charging time and whatnot. The legacy car companies have not been focused on battery electric, so they're making some, but they're not as good. And so that's what I would recommend. We need to reduce air pollution. We need to stop burning fuels. We're going to need ICE vehicles for a long time yet. You know, our work trucks, anything you're towing, stuff like that, you know, heavy use, you're probably going to want to use an internal combustion engine vehicle for that. Battery electric vehicles can tow, but it sucks the range. I mean, it reduces range big time. And so they're not very good vehicles for towing, although it can be done for short trips. You control what you drive. So consider driving something electric, okay? And then there's some terms, ICE, BEV, extended range electric vehicle. I mentioned the Chevy Volt. There's a BMW i3. It's available in all electric or an extended range electric, which has just a gas engine run a generator to give you more electric range. Another thing I want to mention is PZEV, partial zero emissions vehicle. You'll see this on some vehicles. Some manufacturers advertise this by putting a little placard on the back of their vehicle or on their doors, and others don't. What does it mean? It means it's got the idle start, stop. And what that means is when you come to a stop sign or a stop and go light, your engine shuts off. And then as soon as you take your foot off the brake to reaccelerate, the engine starts up and goes. It's a terrible feature. It's not worth it. It's stupid. It's dumb. Manufacturers are putting on vehicles to meet regulations to get more efficiency, more fuel economy out of these vehicles, and it's very annoying. Anybody who has them doesn't like them, and there's quite a few vehicles out there with it. And so pay attention. If you're going to go buy an internal combustion engine, they may not tell you about that or advertise that. Be aware. It's a stupid system. And so anyway, websites, you're looking for new or used electric vehicles, myev.com would be a great source to go. You can go to Auto Trader and, you know, Kelley Blue Book or whatever. There's, you know, all the other normal websites, and you can filter down and look for new and used electric vehicles. There's quite a few out there available. If you're looking for what kind of makes and models are available in hybrid or plug-in hybrid, extended range, and electric, Green Car Reports is a great website to go to for that. They got a guide there that breaks down every make and model available and what they are. So I haven't looked into, maybe you can even look to see if they have that PZEV system on it. Stay away from it. And then the other thing I mentioned is charge stations, PlugShare. PlugShare.com is where you want to go if you want to look up charge stations, see how readily available those are. So thank you for joining me. I hope this was educational and worth it. Please, consider buying battery electric vehicles for your next vehicle so we can reduce car pollution and clean up our environment. Thank you.